Welcome to the Left Hemispheres podcast. It's Thursday, November 1st, 2012. As always, please direct questions, comments, suggestions, or discussion to us via email at lefthemispheres@gmail.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Google+, or Twitter at Left Hemispheres. Halloween was yesterday. How did you guys do with that?
Diabetic coma.
I tried to find someplace here, and I'm in Minnesota right now, and I tried to find someplace, and it's rather lacking. Although I would like to address a point that you guys brought up in previous podcast, which is about the whole parents and the fear of straight razors in candy apples. That whole thing. Yeah, we were back in for 80s, 90s kids. There was the great fear of razors and candy apples, and I was instilled with that fear as well. However, when I got home with my candy, it was as if that whole thing went away because my parents never checked a fucking thing. And I go ahead and eat whatever the fuck you want.
Yeah, my Halloween was pretty boring because we didn't even acknowledge it because this stupid township we live in had the whole trick-or-treat thing last Thursday, which I despise. I hate that they do that. I don't know why they can't just have it on Halloween night. It's not like they moved it out of a school night.
Well, they canceled Halloween in my neighborhood, so trick-or-treating is actually...
that's happening all over the place, too.
So
You
it's
just
actually going to be
said
Saturday.
that about 5 minutes ago, right, mates?
Yeah, so big storm. We should probably get that bit out of the way.
Yeah.
Too. Foundation Beyond Belief has Team Rubicon, which is pulling together a bunch of veterans and emergency responders to put together emergency teams to help people out in the Northeast who are having problems because of the big rains.
Yeah, and if you go to, we'll have this in the show notes, the Team Rubicon website, you could fill out a form for yourself or for family with their contact information, and they'll go and help you clean up or get you supplies. They're a pretty neat outfit. Foundation Beyond Belief polled its members to determine if and who they wanted to send, and Team Rubicon was the charity that ended up being approved. And of course, we also have a link to Red Cross, always a good outfit to donate to. Most of the money goes to actual relief effort, unlike a lot of other charities. So, if you have some spare dough, please donate, help people out. It's not pretty in New York, and the Jersey Shore has really been hit hard. You can make all the jokes you want about the Jersey Shore, but it's not all Snooki and those douchebags. I have a lot of family that was hit pretty hard. My uncle and my aunt and their kids still have no power, and they're probably not going to have power till next week. Mm. So I invited them to come out here, but they didn't want to travel 4 hours west, which I understand. But I mean, and they're doing okay. Everyone's fine. There's no real damage to the house. They just don't have any power. It just so happens it's like first weekend that they get cold. Yeah. Up here in the Northeast, it's the first weekend where it's actually cold and there's no power.
That was actually a plus for my mom. I talked to her today, and she says, I don't know how long the stuff in the freezer out in the garage is going to keep. It's like 35 degrees outside, so she's just using that.
Just open the door. Yeah, so if you're out there and you can spare a few bucks, please shoot it over to the Team Rubicon or the Red Cross or any other charity that you find and you're comfortable with. Not telling you who to donate to. I'm just pointing out some secular ones. Some of our listeners, I imagine, are Foundation Beyond Belief members. So, okay.
All right.
Let's get the show on the road.
Yeah.
The first topic we're going to bring up here is from Pathos, the Uncredible Hawk, a former FTB writer, pointing out survey results about the millennials, their attitude towards atheism, and that it's not nearly as favorable as one might assume given the prevalence of atheism rising in America and the acceptance and the boon of people coming out that we do have. I mean, it is really there. However, I think most of us would agree that it's a lot of the times overstated. I think we may have even discussed it in an early podcast about survey results and the difference between atheists and nuns. Chris Hallquist points out that the younger demographic doesn't really have that much of a favorable opinion of atheists any more than most. And in fact, he's linking to a friendly atheist, and we're just above Muslims in the acceptability.
But that in and of itself is a change. I mean, we were below Muslims for...
True. We were below rapists about a year and a half ago.
Right.
And it's saying 52% of millennials would be uncomfortable with an atheist president. That's dangerously close. I mean, that's almost half. That's the difference between Obama and Romney right now. So
True. The point of all this is that you would think that the younger generation that's coming up would be more accepting than they are. Yeah, Friendly Atheist puts a better spin on it. Hawk's a little more negative about it. I just found that interesting. And the main reason, we wanted to bring this up was because it drills into another article, and we can revisit the millennial thing. It drills into another article about why aren't the Democrats reaching out to secular Americans. And that was kind of what I really wanted to discuss. Hemmant makes the point that, we should be natural allies of the Democrats, which is not really that accurate, I don't think. That's more of a default.
Well, on social issues, I think more often than not, that's probably
right.
true.
And I do still think the prevalence of atheists being liberal and probably Democrat in America is probably true. So Hammond's asking, why don't Democrats reach out to secular Americans more? Basically, why don't they reach out to atheists more? And I guess my point on that is because we're toxic to them. I mean, in their mind, they probably figure it's two things. We're not just toxic. A, it's not like most of us are going to go vote for Romney or McCain or Bush, or Dole, going back. So it really does boil down to, because most people really don't want to do the whole third party thing. So they really do just pick the lesser of the two evils that they see. And most atheists are going to pick the Democrat. Mainly, for a whole gamut of reasons, but it's female health issues, separation of church and state, military. We do come down on the side of the left more often. I'd argue that the Democrats really aren't that far left, but that's another discussion.
Could you imagine how different this election would be if the two main parties were libertarian and green? Night and fucking day, man.
Yeah,
it really would be. It would be so interesting. Or if they just left them in and they had equal share.
Exactly. If those two parties were on the ballot in all 50 states, like if those two parties had achieved 5% of the popular vote in the last election each, then they would be automatically in every state.
Yeah,
and it would be a totally different election. People think that the idea of voting for a quote unquote third party, which is actually a third, fourth, fifth, whatever party, they think that you're throwing your vote away. Well, they think that because the two parties have convinced people, and the mainstream media along with them have convinced people that voting for anything other than the two mainstream candidates is throwing your vote away.
Yeah, I read something on Red State Progressive today that was it was entitled, or it wasn't entitled, but the point of it was we have more than three choices. We're programmed in America to think that we have the choice of Republican, Democrat, or just don't fucking vote. Mm-hmm. And that's bullshit. We have Libertarian, we have Green, and for other people, I wouldn't vote for them, but there's Constitution Party, and there's a couple other. I know Nick's a big fan of Vermin Supreme.
Yeah, Vermin Supreme. But which I mean, I tout Vermin Supreme, but Vermin Supreme says himself that a vote for Vermin Supreme is a vote totally wasted. And his point is that you should not be voting for Vermin Supreme because he is not a real candidate. He is a candidate that's out there to try and draw attention to the fact that the two-party system is broken, severely broken.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not
Vermin Supreme represents the option of having a tally for none of the above.
Right, which is how I have voted. I mean, I voted for no confidence was my writing candidate for president for every election that I've been able to vote for. And people say, you're throwing your vote away. Well, it might be until enough people get behind it and I change my name to no confidence. And then who's going to be in charge?
Well, that's like putting your religion, listing your religion as Jedi in the census, and if enough people do it, it'll officially be a religion.
It's recognized by the military.
Is it really?
Jedi is recognized by the military. Oh yeah.
Oh, that causes some.
But do they have chaplains?
Problems. I mean, mixing church and state is...
Of course not. Of course there are no Jedi chaplains. That would be... You can't have anything...
Oh, there will be. There will be now. That shit's got Disney backing.
Well, yeah, it's true.
We'll talk about that later.
We'll get there.
Yeah, that's in the agenda. But to get back to the point at hand is people are so programmed, and the debates. If you look into how the debates are run, they're run by an organization that is. They come up with the questions, the topics at hand, and who's allowed to get in. And there's only two parties that sign off on this. They were created by the Republicans and the Democrats in the 80s.
Right.
And they generally don't let anybody else in. They wouldn't let Ross Perot in. I mean, the guy was I thought he was a clown, but he had a legitimate right to be there. And they wouldn't let him. So he was so rich, he just bought airtime. I don't know if anybody else remembers that back in 92.
During the 1980s, it was easier for a second party to get recognized legal status in the Soviet Union than it was for a third party to get recognized legal status in the United States. I mean,
fantastic. Perestroika. Love it.
Well, so I guess the real essential question there is there a significant advantage in trying to get the non-theist community writ large to vote as a bloc?
I don't believe so, because I mean,
for whom?
For the non-theist community.
To vote for whom, though?
To vote for whom?
Well, the atheist party.
Well, no, you want to pick one of the third-party candidates just to kind of demonstrate to the big two.
You'll never get agreement there either, because if you took in my opinion, if you took the entire atheist bloc in America and told them, and said, not told them, but said, okay, just to fuck with the system, you can vote for. Let's all vote for one of the third parties just to get them in there. Who would you pick? Then there would be a little internal war over libertarian and green.
Right.
There would be.
That's exactly right, because you would have, I would say, almost a 50-50 split between.
I think it would be a little more towards the green, but not. I see. That's the thing. Like, I think it wouldn't be much, and that's what surprises people. Whenever a libertarian atheist rears their head, the atheists on the left, freak out.
Mm-hmm.
They do. They freak out. Right. And they get all weirded out by it, And I don't call myself a libertarian. And no, of course not.
Some people just freak out at libertarians.
Yeah, well, yeah, I know they do. I know they do. And you know what? I used to as well. And I still don't call myself a libertarian, but I have a lot of, where I fall down on that side. Usually not economically.
Socialist.
Yeah, well, see, I don't know. I've read up on that, and I don't really buy into that either. The economics of that.
That whispering doesn't work. I couldn't understand any of that.
No, It doesn't work. I just heard libertarian socialist. He's trying to get me to jump. I just don't buy into the whole economics of any of that. Anyway, let's not get into that.
But going back to the original question, just of why aren't the Democrats reaching out to us as a group, is because we simply just don't have enough political power. It's just not worth it.
No, but that's growing. But what I think about that is twofold. A, they don't have to for the most part, because no matter what, most of the people are just going to fall down on that side, so they don't really have to put effort into it. It's just like when John McCain went out and got Sarah Palin was a stupid fucking idea, because those people on the right were not going to just go vote for Obama just because he didn't pick some conservative. There was dumb ass logic on McCain's part. I'm glad he did it, because
it's like why it's like why they're not. You don't hear about them spending a whole shitload of campaign money in North Dakota.
No. Yeah, exactly.
Because
what's
the point of fighting that fight?
And then the other side of it is it's related. The false idea that the left can appeal to, it's not the false idea, but they try to appeal to independent voters and even people that are somewhat like moderate centrist right. And by talking to us openly and publicly or taking on any of our church state causes or whatever, we therefore, this is what I opened with, become toxic. The perception is that they're going to lose that independent centrist vote.
Right before we did this, I was at the restaurant that's down the parking lot at the hotel, and I was sitting next to this woman, and she was talking to a woman a couple of feet away in a booth, and all I heard was hysteria, her, and YouTube. And I'm in Minnesota right now, so I assumed Michelle Bachmann. So I said, "Are you talking about Michelle Bachmann?" And they both laughed, and they said, "No, we're talking about Madonna and Lady Gaga." And I said, "Oh, I gave them my reasons for assuming why they would be talking about Michelle Bachmann," and they're like, "No, we're not talking about her, but we can see how you could from what you heard." And they were both native Minnesotans. And then somebody else at the bar said, "Well, given the hypothetical choice between those three for president, Madonna, Lady Gaga, and Michelle Bachmann, what would be your choice?" And they both said, "Well, definitely not Michelle Bachmann, because she's off a rocker."
I'm sad to say I think Lady Gaga would probably win that one.
That's what I would say, and I have really no affinity for her whatsoever. But
and the Oval Office would be fabulous.
Decorated with meat.
Yes. The entire bar was pretty much unanimous, at least as far as not Michelle Bachmann. In the certain state. So.
It certainly sounds like she's going to lose that seat, which is awesome. And by the way, the actual video of the debate where she gets laughed at will be in the FLD, which is tomorrow in real time, and it'll be yesterday or 2 days in podcast time. So if you haven't read the FLD yet, people, go there, because the video of Michelle Bachmann getting laughed at during a debate for just being Michelle Bachmann, I played it on repeat for probably 15 minutes.
Her ads are the most fucking disjointed, discombobulated bunch of bullshit that I've ever seen in a political. I mean, I really don't even know how to.
There was a criticism of that on Twitter where someone was saying the same exact thing. Like, these don't even make sense.
Right.
Like, you can't even parse out what the hell it's about.
Right. She's speaking in tongues.
It's like a jeans commercial from the 80s.
I can't listen to Michelle Bachmann talk anymore without picturing that one bad lip reading that they did with her.
Yeah. Most of her ads are anti-Obama ads, as if she's still running for the candidacy for president. Yeah. It's beware the fucking Jabberwock, for it is fucking Michelle Bachmann.
I heard one on the radio on the way home today. They were talking to somebody somewhere, I don't remember. And they had this lady, and she says, well, I don't think Obama's bad. I just think Mitt Romney could take us in a different direction. And just like, you just... Yeah, the direction where ideas aren't coming from a black guy. That's the direction you want to go in. Because if that's your opinion after the third debate, I mean, everything they said was the same damn thing.
Yeah. He's going to take us in a different mission. It's NASA mission to Kolob. It's like the Ramones, rockets over Russia, but in a totally fucking farcical sense.
Okay, so we agree that the Democrats are cowards.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's
The liberal theists are on your side up to a point. And then once you start getting close to home with them, no matter how much you pussyfoot around it, because you might be friends with them, they'll turn on you. And they'll turn on you fucking quick.
I heard a really good quote. It was actually from Greta Christina, and she was quoting one of the commenters in her blog, and she was just saying that for so long, any kind of talk about religion was in a whisper. And it was a whisper for so long that when everybody talks in a normal voice, it sounds like a shout.
Yep.
People have been treating it with kid gloves for so long that now any atheist is an angry atheist or a new atheist or an anti-theist.
Right.
Anybody out there saying even anything mildly critical or just like, wait a minute, why do you believe X? Why are you such an asshole?
Right. The volume is turned up so high. And I think that this is one of the problems, how we started with all this, with even the young white evangelicals, voting for Romney, or the people in general, like the ultra religious, or even the moderately religious, or the nuns, the people who don't like the idea of an atheist president because they still conflate the vision of an atheist as being this angry anti-theist, and nobody wants to associate with the person who insults their grandma. Like they just can't. Right. They can't get over that
or their
initial. Always for God.
Yeah,
Right.
there is that superstitious aspect of it too that they've played up with. If God protects our country, and if we elect an atheist, we're fucked.
It's a modern
All of a
Pascal's
sudden, there's
wager.
going to be it's very similar.
Yeah, it is. It's a patriotic jingoistic Pascal's wager.
Patriotic, jingoistic, Christian Pascal's wager could be set to the tune of supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
I was actually going to go with
That is pretty damn good.
the flying purple people eater, but it still works.
No, that actually works better. But anyway, this actually, the trajectory we just took in the first part of this podcast here kind of runs, it's a great segue. We've started off with why the Democrats don't want to really associate themselves with the horrid atheists, or there's just secular Americans in general, which there's difference. And then we went, down kind of sloping towards, the progressive Christians and how they'll, be on your side up to a point. And then we get to the atheist that doesn't like atheists who talk. And this comes from an article by Vanguard, which I believe might be a Portland State University article. Yeah. I saw this on Facebook via Dr. Peter Boghossian. God, I really wish I knew how to say his name. Who is fast becoming one of my favorite atheists. I don't really celebrity worship, but I just really like what he does, mainly because his entire tact is just attacking the entire concept of faith. And if anybody has read anything I've ever read, that's my biggest gripe. And I think you kill faith and you kill religion. And I think that's what he's after too. So he's a philosophy professor at Portland State, and he posted this on Facebook because this person from Vanguard wrote an article called "Your Lack of Faith," where they mention him and they sort of criticize atheists. And they opened up the article by saying, should atheists be held to the same standards as religious folk? And I'll just say this right off the bat, this little opinion piece is pretty disjointed. So the premise is, should we be held to the same standards as religious folk? And then it goes into talking about everything but that. The writer, Emily Lakehomer, who I'm sure is a nice person, discusses coming out to her mother as an atheist, and how her mother reacted with the typical thing. I mean, that a lot of us get was it's just a phase. She's criticizing the Freedom from Religion Foundation had their meeting in downtown Portland, and Peter Boghossian, the philosophy professor here at Portland State, was one of the featured speakers. And his lecture was called Walking the Talk, and it's mainly about how atheists should be role models for behavior they want to see in other believers. And atheists should critically examine their beliefs just like they expect Christians to do, which I'm totally on board with.
Yeah.
We've made fun of atheists on Left Hemispheres and in the podcast for not being rational. It doesn't mean you're rational.
Just the same way that being religious doesn't make you moral, being an atheist doesn't make you rational.
Yeah, two totally different things. There's plenty of atheists that play up the bullshit that I'm an atheist, therefore I'm more rational than you, when they're talking to a theist or somebody else. That's total horse shit. Because a lot of these people I see on Twitter and whatnot, wherever, drive me up a wall just as much as some theists half the time. And it's not a superiority complex or anything. It's just that they're using fallacies just the same. Dr. Boghossian's point is we need to walk the talk and really examine why it is we reject belief, reject faith, and what exactly we do believe, and know exactly why we hold what beliefs we do have, and know exactly why we reject certain beliefs. Specifically, quote, what evidence would they need to start believing in God or some other form of higher being? And she goes on to describe how Boghossian said, there's people on all sides that say nothing can convince me otherwise, and those people are just as closed-minded as counterparts, which is a fair point. Sidetrack real quick, Marty Pribble a couple months ago had an article, what would it take to convince you of God? And that was a clusterfuck of comments in a good way, because really it's really almost impossible to, because you could come up with anything to say, well, if someone came down in a fiery chariot and did X, I just wonder if they were some kind of fucking alien screwing with me. So you could really take that to an extreme and be skeptical and be skeptical. But anyway, that's...
Why does God need a starship?
Yeah. Well, it goes to the argument that even the devil can quote scripture, right? That's one thing that I always try to point out to people who ask me, well, God talks to me. And I said, well, your theologians say that even the devil can quote scripture. So how is the fact that you think that some being is talking to you proof of some God?
How do you know it's God who's talking to you?
Exactly.
Yep. Could be old Satan.
Especially when he's telling you to kill both of your children.
There's really, if anybody had any level of skepticism to him, they wouldn't believe anything in that sense. Because you could always, there's always a simpler explanation for anything that out of the ordinary, and even if there isn't an explanation, that doesn't, your assertion is true. Because your assertion is most likely quite a far jump. Mm-hmm. But anyway, to get back to this, she then starts to go off on the mode of attacking atheists. Not attacking, but it's chiding. It has a very chiding tone. That atheists, since we don't believe in anything, we really shouldn't be judging others. And of course, there's the sentence here that just makes me crack my neck. That kind of behavior is just as talking about atheists that challenge or are just open. That kind of behavior is just as annoying as militant Christian or insert random religion here behavior. The old false equivalency is lost on her. The entire concept of false equivalency she doesn't understand. But
what I got out of this, aside from the fact that she makes the distinction between practical versus theoretical atheists, which is really like the naturalist versus the anti-theist. But
yes, yeah, I know. I noticed that.
But just that whole concept of basically saying that atheism is personal, and that it should be personal, and it is for many people as far as the reason that you choose that outlook is personal. You could say that if it's a personal conclusion that you come to, but there's no reason that it has to be, especially in a society where you're constantly assaulted by a battery of religious images and religious claims on a regular basis. That it's that whisper versus the shout. That anytime you make any type of statement, it's automatically going to be a shout. Jack said in an earlier podcast that it's already an activist position because you have to defend it. If you're willing to bring it up, you almost certainly have to defend it. It's very rare that you can just put that out there and
that'd be the end of it. Yeah.
Right. And have people just nod their head and go on with the conversation. Usually the conversation becomes about atheism every time I bring it up.
Where she says, making any kind of generalization about any one religion is counterproductive to open-mindedness. Christians or any religious practitioners should respect the views of others, and inversely, atheists should respect the views of those folks who practice religion. That's bullshit.
Yeah, it is
pretty much.
I mean,
for a couple of reasons.
I mean, she's saying generalization, but
and then proceeds to make one.
Well, exactly. I mean, most of the arguments that I see made against religion are anything but generalizations. They tend to be very specific.
Often they're about the coherency of the actual theology of the claim itself.
Exactly. Right. So I mean, on that point, I don't see where her argument stands.
No, and in conjunction with that, if only religion would keep to itself. Would this blog exist if religion just kind of kept to its own corner and they did their own thing on Sundays and there was a nice wall of separation of church and state? Would any of us even be doing this?
If Wiccans were the majority,
yeah,
would we be still be doing this? And yes, but probably in a rather different tone because
it would be more of the Bigfoot debunkers.
No, we'd be doing the exact same thing, just God would have tits.
Well, see, no, I don't think so. I still don't think so, because it would be more along the lines of debunking Loch Ness and Bigfoot, because the way the way the Wiccans operate, or pagans, at least now, neo-pagans, I should say. It's not like the Vikings are coming around the corner, which would be a fucking problem. But they're not going to really get in your case. They don't give a fuck if you're not going to go out in the woods and do a little fucking dance around a fire. They don't care.
Right.
Good on you. They don't give a shit. The second half of this, I actually wrote a comment to respond to her, and it was very polite. And I pointed out a few things. One was what Adam brought up, where she's kind of. I've never actually heard of someone really describe atheism as practical and theoretical, but one of the main things I brought up was, if only religion would keep to itself, and it's not as if it doesn't. And because of that, it forces itself onto other people in all facets of our lives. And, some of the more mundane things that people kind of rib us for are, oh, well, you don't want to see a billboard? Well, no, I don't. But that doesn't really bother me. But it's just a symptom of the fucking problem of, religion being ingrained in this country. And to dismiss people that want to talk about these things and ask rational, critical questions for people's beliefs that end up resulting in discrimination against LGBTQ people, against women and their health choices, against the separation of church and state, and, as Nick knows, within the military, these have real world consequences. And to just sit back and say that's just their choice is total horseshit. She just basically dismisses ethics and activism by saying this. Nothing would change if everyone sat down and shut the fuck up.
Right.
And it really pisses me off when I hear this argument, because it's assuming a very relativist, liberal fucking stance that everybody is right. And I don't have to prove myself right to everybody. And I don't, again, I can't, nor do I care to. But just leave me the fuck alone. And don't push your crap on me and my family and my friends. You know what I mean? Yeah. That's what really drives me crazy about this kind of idea that we should all just get along and not argue. It's nonsensical, because there's real consequences to these beliefs. People are discriminated against. They're not allowed to live their lives free for all this. As much as the right wants to talk about liberty, that's horseshit. There is no liberty with God. And to say that there is to not understand what liberty is. And then also, just for me to wrap up, she quotes Christopher Hitchens and then Nicki Minaj. But
I mean, we all know what it was like in the 90s, in the 80s and the 90s. Imagine if people hadn't spoken up during those decades.
Mm-hmm.
There was a huge, the 90s was huge for the LGBTQ community. Huge.
Yeah.
If people had not spoken up during that time, there was a time that was ripe. It was ripe for speaking up on those issues. And we would not be, to come out during that time was still a horrifying concept.
Mm-hmm.
Social suicide, definitely.
Oh, yeah.
Well, yeah. What year did Matthew Shepard die?
Was that 1991?
1998.
That was 98. Wow.
Matthew Shepard was killed in 1998. Wow. So, yeah, everybody just keep to your corners and don't say anything, because you might upset somebody. Right. Fuck you. I just can't stand that entire mentality. It's not a, well, they do it too kind of mentality for me. Whereas it might sound like that to some people. Well, like, they're talking, so why can't I talk? But I want them to talk, and I want to talk. So the people that don't want to talk, you can keep to yourself.
Yeah, it's kind of, that's where freedom of speech and the marketplace of ideas comes in. Everybody talk and we'll figure it out. But
exactly.
Don't
you know
shut
what?
up.
In my opinion, I want the other side, our opposition that I am not loyal to dig their own fucking grave by keep talking. Yeah. Keep talking. You're on the losing end unless you use force. Keep talking.
Make the best argument you fucking can. And
try it.
We will tear it to pieces.
That's because I haven't heard one yet.
Right. Well,
I'm still waiting.
That goes perfectly into the next topic that we have. The article that I sent in from the Humanist, Truth, Deception, and Myth, of the One-Handed Scientist. Ira Flatow, who does Sci-Fri, Science Fridays for NPR, which is one of my favorite programs. There's so much that he brings up that can be learned, and I just received, before I traveled out to Minnesota, my issue of this month's copy of the Humanist. And there's an interview in there with him, and there's some beautiful stuff that melds with what we were just talking about.
Mm-hmm.
There's a particular paragraph towards the beginning, in addition to talking about where he talks about, creationism and, other. I don't even like to call it pseudoscientific, because it's not even pseudoscientific. A few years ago, we did a Science Friday program on autism and vaccinations. We had the world's leading authority on the topic as a guest, and he confirmed that there's no connection between vaccinations and autism. A woman called in and said, "I don't believe it. I don't believe the things you're saying or quoting." She went on and on, and my engineers were motioning for me to cut her off. But I didn't want to cut her off. She was an intelligible person, and I wanted to hear her thinking. After 10 minutes, I finally asked her, "Is there any amount of research in any form, from any person, any government, any university, I could show you that would change your mind?" She said no. Her mind had been made up.
That's incredible.
And it is incredible. We had a similar thing on our
Left
Facebook
Hemispheres
page.
on the Facebook page, yeah.
Yeah. I posted something about a woman who could not. It was basically a blog post by this woman who was lamenting the fact that she was having a hard time, if not an impossible time, finding a daycare where she could have her son, because he had cancer, he had leukemia, I believe, and because of that, he could not be vaccinated for certain things. Well, there were also kids. She thought that she had found the perfect daycare for him, and there were kids at the daycare that were not vaccinated because of their parents', philosophical / religious beliefs. And because of that, her child would have been at risk because the other children were not vaccinated. And we got a response back from someone who's actually a moderator at another very prominent Facebook atheist site, who basically said, "Well, apparently you haven't done your research, blah, blah, blah." And my response was, "I've done a lot of research, and the research has shown that vaccinations have saved millions and millions of lives throughout the world, throughout decades, that the side effects are few and far between and rather mild. So if you have a child that has a medical exemption," this is my response, "if your child has a medical exemption, if they are sick and they cannot receive, because they have some kind of immunodeficiency or what have you, that's fine. That's understandable. That's completely acceptable. Mm-hmm. That is what those exceptions to vaccinations are for. However, if you have bought into pseudoscientific bullshit by people who want to tell you that homeopathic cures are better and that vaccinations are poison, then you are putting my children at risk, and you can go fuck yourself." I believe these were my exact words. "You can go fuck yourself." And I stand by those words.
So there's something to be said about the herd immunity, and the reason for that small population of people who are not vaccinated. The reason for that is for that small population, people who have egg allergies, for example.
Exactly.
Or
right.
The people who can't take it for medical reasons.
It's for their benefit.
Right. But that those numbers are completely thrown off, and it literally, I mean, it not only does it ruin it for everybody, but I mean, it's just potentially lethal for children, for Christ's sake.
For Christ's sake.
Seriously.
It's the examples that have been given recently by anti-vaxxers on the West Coast. There have been outbreaks of pertussis, and that the majority of kids who have contracted pertussis have been vaccinated. As well, vaccinations give a certain amount of protection.
It's a prophylactic. It's not a cure.
Exactly. I mean, your body is responding to the vaccination and producing antibodies, and it's not going to be able to produce antibodies against every particular strain of a disease. However, if the majority of people are protected against that disease, the greater the number, then the lower the instance.
Mm-hmm.
So when they say, well, the majority of the kids that were infected with pertussis in these outbreaks were vaccinated, well, that's because your fucking kids were not protected, and it's not the kids' fault. I want to make this very clear. It's not the kids who were unvaccinated. It's not their fault. It's the fault of their fuck-up parents who have no fucking respect for anyone else, who have no respect for the children of other parents. Those selfish motherfuckers who have no desire to help protect my children.
So that's a fair point, because I mean, you look at what happened with the anti-vaxxers and the autism thing. Every one of those parents who was on the vaccinations cause autism, and now my kid's autistic thing, all of a sudden their kids are indigo children, which is some weird.
Right.
Well, that's a subset, yeah.
Right.
Which I can't even get my head around.
It's kind of like autistic kids who aren't actually autistic. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, and there's the same parents that threw their arms up when, for the recent revision, and Adam, you can probably help with this with the exact terminology, the psychiatric manual.
The DSM-5?
Right.
The one that's coming out? Right.
Right, the one that's coming out. Asperger's and other autism-related
spectrum disorders
are now just classified under autism.
Right.
In the new DSM. So, and they were the people that were throwing a fit. Well, my kid doesn't have autism; he has Asperger's. Well, your kid has all. It's all a spectrum, and it all goes back to the idea there's any kind of fucking black and white in this goddamn universe.
On that note, that's part of the DSM-4, the current one. It's still the autism spectrum. But what ended up happening is the categories, or the diagnosing criteria for Asperger's broadened, so that a wider range of children fit into the category of Asperger's, and therefore fit into the category of autism. Why you suddenly see these billboards that, like 1 in every 4 children is diagnosed with autism. That's to include this huge swath of new people that are diagnosed with Asperger's.
Mm-hmm.
So the numbers didn't change, but the criteria that we used to identify the symptomatology changed, which then skewed the numbers. So that's just, another one of those examples of the statistics getting away from people, and then other people using it for political gain, obviously.
Right. To get back to this article, he criticizes journalists for not understanding enough, which has been a criticism for a while, that a lot of journalists have journalism degrees, and they don't have degrees in anything else. So when you have a journalist who is interviewing a scientist or interviewing a historian, they don't know the right questions to ask, and especially the right follow-up questions to ask, because they don't have an understanding of the topic.
Right. It's also in the modern, I hate to use the term, the modern mainstream media. They don't even. I didn't say lamestream. I said mainstream.
That's better.
I was just going to say lamestream.
They don't even have either the wherewithal or the give a damn to challenge. Even if you don't know anything, you can go, wait a minute, where does that assertion come from? What are you basing that on? And he brings up the example of White House or political reporters. When a politician says something, they just block quote them. I mean, all they do is regurgitate talking points from a politician, which is about the worst thing you can do.
Right. Sound bites from talking heads.
There's no fact checking generally. I mean, they don't even try. They don't ask, wait a minute, where your economic policy, where are you getting this from? Or
well, that's just it. If you play the clip of them talking, then you don't have to fact check. All of a sudden, you're just quoting what they said. You're just
right. But he's in this article, he's lamenting that there is no challenging of the authority.
There's no commentary. Yeah, and what commentary?
Well, there's no real commentary.
Yeah,
because I contend that the 24-hour news cycle has devolved into infotainment, and is probably about the worst thing for democracy that you could possibly have, because all we have are talking heads that chatter back and forth, and nobody actually fact checks anything. If I joke,
if you do fact check somebody, then you're an activist.
Well, actually, yeah, you're an asshole.
Agenda, right? Like the Candy
Crowley, during the debate, or was it the second?
No, Mr. Romney, you're wrong.
Yeah.
Well, that kind of swung the other way a little bit. To the other day, I saw a clip. They were talking to the Fox and Friends crew was talking to Chris Christie.
Yeah.
About the storm relief. Did you see this clip?
No,
I didn't.
It was so good. The one guy, the blonde guy who's silly. I don't know his name.
Pod person.
What is it?
Pod person.
Yeah, kind of. You know the one, the tall blonde one.
Yeah.
And Chris Christie is talking about, storm relief efforts, and he said some really nice things about how Obama responded to the storm and all. And this guy just said, so we heard that, Mitt Romney is going to be doing some storm relief stuff. Do you have any plans to have Mr. Romney with you in his state? And he said, half my state's underwater. I don't give a damn about politics right now.
and Chris Christie's a very conservative.
Yeah.
I mean, he's been very critical, very vocal of Obama, and he's actually been kind of a darling of the conservatives to run in 2016.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think they're rather disappointed that he didn't just go after Obama and attack him.
He didn't toe the line.
Fashion. Right.
He didn't toe the line, and that's the greatest thing you can do if you're a Republican conservative.
Yeah, say something nice about Obama.
Well, just not toe the line. You spoke off script. Fuck you. I mean, they're attacking him left and right today. There was a lot of different articles about how Fox and the Republicans are just going after Christie today. I mean, back in August he was the golden boy.
Right.
Well, when he gave the speech at the RNC.
Yeah.
The speech was all about himself.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's all about himself. Which I found funny that, they still loved him, but then he, praised Obama for something and didn't toe the party line. So now he's the asshole.
Yeah.
Which I have no love for Chris Christie, but, he's doing his job.
Yeah, right. For a minute, he got out of the little party machine, and he actually decided to...
I'll give him credit for that. He'll think for himself.
Yeah.
It's about the only thing nice I could say for the guy.
And that's all.
Well, you know what? That's good enough in some ways. I mean, at least
really.
So, but I don't know if we want to wrap up this article. This article's great. It's got so much good in it. But along the lines, what Nick was bringing up about how people just will not change their minds. He says you can't talk to creationists, which is true. I mean, he does bring up the example of some people will change their mind, but it's rare. And you almost have to leave it up to them to do on their own. But in that, I think there needs to be exposure to the opposing thought process for people to be able to, if they're willing to be able to open up their mind and at least enough to evaluate what it is they believe and why. And he goes on to say, we need a paradigm shift in how we teach and talk about science in this country, because it's not presented as something that's accessible. It's presented as something because of the way it kind of is, and the way it was presented in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s is sort of like an elite thing. You have to be an elite academic in order to understand all this stuff, which is true to a degree. I mean, just in the sense of the nuts and bolts of it. I don't fucking understand quantum theory. I wouldn't even pretend to understand quantum theory, but I think I understand enough of it to be able to get what it's about, but I would never even fucking talk about it in any kind of real manner.
Not without Deepak Chopra.
Yeah.
Random quote generator.
Quantum love, baby.
Quantum love.
What his point is like we need to change the way we talk about science, and I would also just bring in we need to change the way we need to talk about a lot of different things and present them as you don't have to understand everything about something in order to appreciate it, not even accept it. I don't want to say that because that sort of implies that people have to accept certain things, but you don't have to understand, especially with science. People misunderstand science in the sense of it's a very fluid. I mean, people don't understand how fluid it is, and any scientist worth his salt changes his mind over time with additional evidence, things that are proven to work and proven not to work, and then you move on. That makes a lot of people very uncomfortable. You know, you hear it all the time in little stupid things. I'll just give as a very mundane example the opinion that people have of eggs as a health benefit or a health negative.
Yeah.
Right? You'll hear, oh, well, 20 years ago they said it was good, then it was bad, then it was good, then it was bad. I mean, that's sort of an everyday and somewhat annoying thing, but that just goes to show that it's a very fluid thing, and you really shouldn't accept too much on face value. But we have to present science in a way that it's seen as fluid, and it's seen as you don't have to accept everything wholesale in order to evaluate.
Well, I think that gets into a very intricate discussion, because I think it's not so much about talking in education about science as a block subject, but I think if you want kids to appreciate science and critical thinking, then you have to kind of nurture a sense of curiosity, which isn't really what we do now with the whole teach to the test method of education. It's just kind of, here's the answers, memorize them, that's what you need to know.
No child left behind.
Yeah, and that doesn't work to instill the curiosity that you need to want to go out and think about how things work and find out how things work. And
I think in some sense we're talking about the philosophy of science, what it actually does, and understanding and appreciating the method of using evidence and experimentation to understand how things work. And that's the part where, and like Jack was saying, is that if we're not fostering curiosity, then we're not encouraging people to investigate. We're telling them what to think because it's easier. And this is one of the reasons that it's such at odds with religion in particular, because it starts, religion starts with the answer and then tries to form the question around it. Whereas, the dogmatism of religion is that you already have the answer, and that once you've settled on the answer, then all the other things are extemporaneous. And with science, you are really settling on the process of searching for new answers and evaluating your answers and going back to the drawing board, and that's the process that is science. And it's a reason that you can't that the religious people can always just say, well, you don't have an answer. In the 70s they thought that the world was going to freeze over, and now they think that it's global warming. Well, since you guys can't make up your mind, since you can't settle on an answer, you must be wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because we're not settling on an answer, we're settling on the process.
Well, yeah, there's another thing that's I posted. It's going to be in the FLD. Nick, I believe you sent this. Was a video from Upworthy about the tobacco industry, or did somebody else send that?
Yeah, that was Nick.
Yeah. About how the tobacco industry instilled doubt in the science of tobacco being detrimental. And when I drew the parallel in the FLD very briefly, because it's the FLD, that this is the exact same thing they've done with evolution, and then you could say the same thing with, because the point of the whole video is the same way that they drew the line of doubt with pretty hard evidence that tobacco is detrimental, which we all know, everybody now knows is detrimental.
For the past 40 years.
Right.
In the 1960s, the Surgeon General said there is a link between smoking tobacco products and cancer.
And the tobacco companies knew it. And what they did was they hired scientists to basically fabricate crap. You could now call them pseudoscientists. Mm-hmm. And the point of the video is drawing that to the parallel of what they've done with global warming, with big oil and these companies that have done the same exact thing. They've basically fabricated a bunch of doubt about something that is a very good consensus of scientific thought that is happening. And I drew the parallel in the FLD is they did the same thing to evolution, that there's a bunch of doubt about it.
Right, because all you have to do is just give the impression that there's still a conversation or an ongoing argument about it, and that the science isn't settled.
Yeah,
and as soon as it isn't, and science is never settled because it's science, which means that you can't find a scientist, an honest one, who will tell you that anything is ever really settled. They'll tell you that this is the current consensus. They'll tell you this is the process, but they won't tell you that we're certain.
Well, certain things are a fact.
Well, true.
Not to go back to the storm again, but that kind of was addressed this week too. There was Bloomberg had a really interesting bit where he was giving a speech, and he basically came out and said, look, we need to get used to the fact that these kind of storms are going to happen from now on.
Yeah.
And I don't really care why they happen, but we need to accept that they're happening.
Yeah.
And that's really all we're asking for.
and it is starting that we're hearing that more and more, because the people who have to deal with them are essentially setting aside the political argument about whether or not the science is true.
It's man-made, and saying
it's still happening.
Yeah, it's happening one way or the other. So
yeah, I've never gotten the argument of, well, hey, there's no consensus on what pollution does. Therefore, global warming might not be. Wait a minute, what? There's pretty good consensus. At least pollution is bad. I think everybody can agree. It's not a good idea to put a bunch of mercury in the ocean. Can we agree on this? I mean, you can't eat tuna 2 times a week.
Right. There's that one panel cartoon about where they have it looks like an auditorium, full of people, and there's a bunch of stuff projected on a screen, and it says, healthier forests, cleaner air, going down a list of positive effects of instituting environment policies. And there's one guy in the audience that stands up and says, what if we make a better world for nothing?
Yeah.
But all those end times people, that's really what they think. That there's no point. That it's the world is going to end within their lifetime. So why not burn up all the fossil fuels and pollute the oceans?
because in 20 years everything will run on Jesus.
The ultimate fossil fuel. Bible.
He turned water into wine. He can turn the oceans into ethanol.
Right. He can refine that shit.
Quick little thing. Nick, you sent this in. The Richard Murdoch or Abu Hamza, spot the difference between the Christian social conservatives and the Islamic fundamentalists.
Yeah.
That was pretty great. It's a quiz. Go follow the link on the show notes and take it, because
it's eye-opening.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It's hard. I didn't get everyone right, and I normally do.
That really threw me for a loop.
Yep.
Yeah, there were certainly a few of those where I recognized the quote vaguely as coming from one direction or the other, but other than that, I mean, it was only because we're all internet junkies that I think we had any shot at all.
You got at least 2 or 3 or maybe even 4 wrong.
Yeah.
As much of an internet junkie as I am, I still got a couple of these wrong.
Yeah.
Right. The average American, if you had them try and take this, they would fail utterly, because they would choose the Islamic fundamentalists every time, and they would be wrong,
half the time. Yeah,
half the time. I think because they actually did split up pretty evenly between.
Yeah, they did
between the two. But it was just a matter of which one said which crazy shit. So
I was really interested in all the quotes of this, like this concept of women having this seduction superpower. Considering that that these groups, that both of these types of fundamentalists have marginalized and subjugated women as much as possible. One, successfully even has mixed into the culture where you could cover a woman head to toe, so that if her ankle shows.
After looking through this real quick, I don't want to ruin it for anybody, but you can sort of, I guess this will ruin it, but you can sort of guess along the lines of there's 2 sort of main thought processes between the Islamic fundamentalist and the Christian social conservative. The Islamic fundamentalist, as Adam said, has this idea that women have like a seductive superpower over men, which will destroy the man. And on the Christian social conservative side, it's that women are weak and stupid.
Right.
You can kind of guess. If you take that advice, you could probably get more of these right. I just went through it real quick, and I think most of the time you could probably split it down that line. The fundamentalists are scared of women because of sex, and the conservative Christians are scared of women because of power.
I think especially for the women on the conservative side of things, it becomes particularly embarrassing to bring up what the Bible actually says. I mean, to bring up Michelle Bachmann again, she's a woman in power. But according to the Bible, she should shut the fuck up, which wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing in this particular case.
I think she's on record as saying that she obeys her husband, or something to that effect, or that she recognizes that she has to, basically, that'll get in the kitchen and make me a sandwich, right. That she, on some level, although being a person in power who is essentially hired for her decision-making abilities, as fucking frightening as that is, that she would still defer to her husband because of that being a biblical literalist.
All right, the next article, can good people be against same-sex marriage?
No.
Okay, moving on to the next article.
I mean, there are people who are good people who are out there who have bought into what their church says, or and so they believe that same-sex marriage is against the traditional beliefs. However, you can't. That's like saying that if it was 1860 and the same article was out there, the article would read, "Can good people be against abolition?"
Right. Well, I think
the abolition of slavery. The real answer is no. It is no. You cannot. It doesn't matter what the good book says. There are, and having just watched today, finally, Abraham Lincoln, Vampire Hunter, the point was brought up again and again in the movie that no man is free as long as a man is a slave. And this is not exactly the same instance, but how can anyone consider marriage to be a free institution between two individuals if two individuals are denied the ability to make that agreement freely, which is what they're doing? Minnesota is one of the states that right now is going through that battle. And I've seen the signs, I'm in Red Wing right now, which is in the southeast corner of Minnesota. I've driven to and from Minneapolis, St. Paul a couple times, and I've seen the signs in people's front yards saying yes or no in favor of their anti-gay marriage amendment, their amendment to make marriage between a man and a woman. And I don't see how you can support freedom and not support two people of whatever gender.
It's strict religious bigotry.
Mm-hmm.
And it also is. These people don't understand the Constitution and the 14th Amendment. But
well, now, okay, so I can think of one particular exclusion. You can be a good person and against same-sex marriage if you are against marriage across the board.
Nice.
If you just think marriage is a bad thing for everybody,
which there are,
then you can, you're applying it equally to everyone, and that's fine. And realistically,
as long as you're equal opportunity.
Well,
right.
I mean, in terms of, because when you talk about, same-sex marriage as being equal to, I guess I just phrased the question differently, I think, right? I think that same-sex marriage should be equal to
regular
conventional marriage is
neurotypical marriage.
Well,
I hate that term.
I know, so do I. Everything I just said I hate.
Right. The idea that the government should even be involved in marriage.
Yeah, right. That's my point. I mean, the only reason it's an issue is because there are all these governmental incentives to being married.
Well, I think the government should be involved in it, but I think the church should be left out of it. I think it should be illegal.
Is left out of it.
Well, that's the point.
The church actually doesn't recognize anything. The only thing that a religious officiant has to do with a marriage license is as a witness. It's not recognized religiously at all in any case, in any state across the entire country.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a completely secular institution already.
But they still have all the power to make all the decisions about it through the government process.
And there is the crux. Mm-hmm. They're trying to instill a religious value onto a secular institution.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's the problem.
The idea that you're going to give special rights to same-sex marriage is fucking ludicrous if it's a right that you already have. You're the one with the special right. if you're trying to have something that other peoples cannot have. The Christians want it to be their special right.
Right. Which
to recognize it between a man. And nobody's forcing some Christian church or a synagogue or a mosque or anything, a temple, to perform a same-sex marriage ceremony.
Right.
They won't even remove their tax exemption
status. It's not even on the table. It's not even on the table. It's ludicrous. Now, what I would say about can good people be against same-sex marriage? I would actually say yes. I would say wrong people that are wrong could be against same-sex marriage because there's an ignorance factor.
Yeah.
I'm uncomfortable with labeling people bad.
Right.
They're wrong.
And also, there's an ick factor. There's a natural aversion that some heterosexuals have to just the idea.
Natural aversion. I believe it's a completely religious aversion. You and I disagreed on this in the past, Adam.
Right. But it's because I think it's cultural, and I think the religion is an aspect of the culture. I don't think that it's just the religious hold on the culture. I think it's an overall cultural, prompting that religion is an aspect of.
Born of religion, though.
Well, again, that's where the two of us go back and forth for decades.
Whatsoever. There's cultures on this planet that don't have a problem with it whatsoever. The Native American tribes had a completely third gender.
Yeah,
where they recognized people that
two spirit people.
What's that?
A lot of Native American cultures refer to them as two-spirit people. People that were either you're female and you identify as male, or male identifies as female, and they allowed those relationships to take place. Where you would have same-sex relationships, same-sex marriage, and all the same rights and responsibilities as every other.
And in some cases, they were exalted.
Right. And I think the most useful part of this entire article is one of the first sentences that the guy puts out there is essentially the part of the argument is that both sides are saying two different things. And I think this is probably the only argument that could possibly be made for how a good person can still be opposed to it. The proponents of same-sex marriage ask, is keeping the definition of marriage as a man and a woman fair to gays? And opponents of same-sex marriage ask, is same-sex marriage good for society? And I think that is really the crux of the argument. It's probably the best way that I've seen it stated, at least in a long time, that it really comes down to that the argument for the opponents of same-sex marriage isn't really about redefining marriage. It's about whether or not it's good for society. They don't care about the term of marriage being redefined. Nobody cares about the definition of it.
I disagree.
I disagree too.
You think that they really care about the word?
That's their secondary tactic.
Yeah, because
because it goes back for them. It goes back to God. It goes back to religion, and they're only bringing up some sociological aspect of it because it's the only thing that they have to hold on to, and that's wrong too. So they really have nothing to hold on to.
Oh no, and I don't totally disagree with you. But what I'm thinking is they're saying that it's bad for society, but they're talking about it's bad for the planet. It's bad for the Lord's judgment. That kind of bullshit.
It's absurd.
Of course it is. But it's about it being bad for the children and being a bad example and all that other thing. But it's about it being bad to be gay. It isn't about the redefinition of the actual word.
To me, it's all secondary.
It's about the word.
I think to me that is all secondary justification for their position because they know they can't hold on to the religious one.
They know that there's secular groups out there now who won't just let them slide with the book says this and that's that.
And religious groups too. Let's not forget. I mean, there are plenty of religious allies to same-sex marriage, and a lot of them don't recognize the argument that it's against God. So
we should probably give them more credit than we do.
Yeah.
Well, I would say that falls into the dissonance that follows with.
Well, yeah,
liberalism in religion, and
yet another.
They're attempting to deny the fact that their beliefs that were created by late Iron Age sheep herders or whichever group are totally incongruent with modern humanistic beliefs, and that's really where it's come from. Is that humanism has crept in?
Mm-hmm. It's not even humanism. They're rejecting their religious idea in favor of their internal moral compass.
Right.
Which you want me to explain
Which-
the internal moral
well,
compass? I really can't, but I believe that's something. I believe it exists. I believe people are internally moral. And just because I say I believe it and I can't explain it doesn't mean that it comes from somewhere else.
I'm a big proponent of the evolved social coherence.
And I was just going to jump to that. It is beneficial. It's beneficial to be moral in a social structure. Well, yeah, but humanism is not. It didn't evolve with Homo erectus and.
Well, but humanism per se did not. But the morals that humanism projects, that humanism has come to accept, I think, are the morals that
the natural order
we evolved with. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. They're the evolved morals of humanity.
The human rights.
Immoral morals of religion.
Well, the Bible the Bible is a very moral book. It's not a very ethical book, but it's a very moral book. It's definitely a book that has strong moral stances. But that doesn't mean that it's ethical. It's a very unethical book. It's a book that's full of just outright bullshit and lies and genocide, murder, and rape and just justifications for all those things.
Name that atrocity.
Yeah, right, exactly.
We have Joshua. To wrap up, my opinion.
Wrap up.
Not to wrap up this topic. I think people are just wrong.
In general.
The end.
Did I come off as conceited?
Well, I think the gist of that is, when you ask, can good people be against same-sex marriage, the issue is, can a good person knowingly deny somebody else's, pursuit of happiness if it doesn't affect them at all?
Well,
and I think the answer to that is no.
Yeah, I would agree.
They don't believe that it doesn't affect them because they think that it affects society as a whole negatively. Therefore, they're affected by it. And that's the argument that I think it's difficult for us to see because it doesn't make any fucking sense to us.
Well, yeah, because it's wrong.
Right. But the thing is, in order to combat the argument, you have to understand it, and it's so hard.
I understand that, but every time they've ever thrown out a fact or figure about it, it's been a crap study or it's been just an outright lie. So
the answer comes back around to no.
Yeah, the answer's still no.
Yeah, no, it's no.
Second I jumped to in the very beginning is no.
Well, we all said no or laughed when everyone else said no.
Right.
But then we started parsing words because there is some, I don't want to label people as bad people, but at the same time they're wrong. And Jack said, they're denying other people their liberty, so fuck them.
Yeah.
Well, that's not what you said, but I'm kind of paraphrasing.
Enough.
Yeah.
I'll take that.
Okay, moving on. This article is why the IRS isn't going after candidate endorsing churches. And, I mean, quite simply, they could have been doing this for decades now. This isn't anything new. It's just that now these churches are getting bold about flat out, the sign on the billboard here is vote for the Mormon, not the Muslim, the capitalist, not the communist. I mean, that's a political sign, and that breaks their 501(c) rule or their exemption. But the IRS has stated they have officially halted tax audits of churches until it can adopt rules that clarify which high-level employee has the authority to initiate them.
The rule's in place, but there's no one to sign off on.
This law has been around for decades.
The IRS is actually saying they don't have the authority to audit a church.
Exemptions have been around forever, but the way the law has been structured has been around for decades. So they can't plead ignorance on this. It's amazing to me, except for I would just put forth that the only reason why they won't go after it is because they're cowards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's political suicide to actually enforce the law. And this is why religious exemptions just need to be wiped off the face of the nation, because they're breaking it left and right, and there is no actual benefit.
Right.
They want to claim, I don't know, you guys probably never read it. I think Adam might have because I made him. I wrote
Yes, I read it twice, actually. Maybe more than twice.
It's the longest thing I ever put on Left Hemispheres. It's like 13 pages in Word, 15 pages in Word about tax exemptions. I may as well have been in grad school when I wrote it. And I went through the whole backlog of legal history on it. And the main reasons why the religious exemption exists is A, tradition, which is a fucking horrible fucking reason. And this is straight out of the Supreme Court. And that religious institutions provide a service to society that the government cannot provide. And I call bullshit on both of those reasonings. Tradition is never a good reason for anything.
Right.
And what service do they actually provide? Some of them do charity, and some of them better than others. Well, but we all know that these mega churches are holding all this money, and even these small churches are holding all this money. They can buy land, and that's exempt. The Catholic Church is one of the biggest landholders in the world.
Madison spoke about this in the addendum. In one of his writings, I think it was dated from 1817. But he wrote about the fact that their churches and their ability to, as continual, basically immortal institutions, have to be reined in, because if they're not, then they can continue to acquire land, acquire property ad infinitum, and hold the rest of the country basically at ransom.
Just on a completely side note tangent, I had a conversation with a strict Catholic who surprised me very much by telling me that she was a strict Catholic. But the first thing she said that she believes all of it. And I'm like, you believe in transubstantiation? And she's like, yes. Which I was first amazed that she knew what it was by that term.
Well done. By the name.
Right, but she's like, yeah. And I'm like, really?
I don't know if I've ever met a Catholic that actually believes it, to tell you the truth.
Oh, I have. I think I talked before about my wife's cousin who converted.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Her husband is Opus Dei.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
And she took the classes, and man, did she drink the fucking clerical
bloody Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
So
this isn't strictly
Disney
religious, but
no, it's not. But I feel like it had to be brought up. Am I wrong for feeling like this has to be?
I would say that if I had to, if you asked me which had a bigger effect on my childhood, church or Star Wars,
yeah,
hands
Church of the Jedi.
down, Star Wars.
Right. I'm the lone Star Trek freak here, but I still like Star Wars.
But it's still part of our culture. And
well, no, absolutely. And I always gave more of a shit about Star Wars than church.
Just show of hands, if they invented a lightsaber and it cost, I don't know, $8,000, how many of us would own one?
Oh yes, absolutely.
Oh yeah, dude, it would be in my possession within a day. I'd take out an equity loan if I had.
I sell a kidney on the black market for a lightsaber.
And I would be in the backyard just chopping trees down like a fool.
Yeah,
I'd clear a lot out.
Everything would become something to cut down.
Yeah. Anyway,
yeah. So
I included this because it was such a big deal this week. Disney buys Lucasfilms for a boatload of money, like over $4 billion. And but what really impressed me was the day later it came out that George Lucas is going to donate the vast majority of that $4 billion to fund education. So almost all the proceeds are going to
real all science literacy, and it's good stuff.
Yeah, it's amazing actually, and it really. I mean, I have to admit it improves my perception of George Lucas greatly, because my perception of George Lucas previously was pretty much that of South Park. Where Indiana Jones was getting raped on a pinball machine.
Right. My problems with this isn't. George Lucas. I understand. You want to sell the business. You want to sell the franchise. Fine. He doesn't have any faults in this. I don't think. I just wish it wasn't Disney. But
who else can afford it?
Well, yeah, but I mean, one of my problems, going back to what we were talking about before with inspiring curiosity and creativity in kids, you know? Star Wars has always been a very good vehicle for that because George Lucas was always so supportive of the fan culture.
Right.
You know, I mean, there's Star Wars fan vids everywhere, and he's perfectly okay with that. And I think that kind of that losing that to the Disney, we will sue the crap out of you if you use our intellectual property, even in
monoculture.
Yeah.
Well, the fan fiction go away.
To that is a big drain on.
I've never read Star Wars fan fiction, but I've read Star Trek fan fiction, and it would be sad if that went away. Again, not having read Star Wars, but just the fact that it wouldn't exist.
My wife is a big Star Wars fan, and she has read a lot of the Star Wars fan fiction. Where she's read a lot of the novels, you know, and I was amazed by how much she educated me on what Luke and Leia did after, you know, the movies.
Dude, your wife got so much cooler.
I don't know.
But I am still holding out hope for one good outcome from the Star Wars.
And I know what you're going to say. So.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm holding same here. So go ahead.
Well, okay. So Disney owns Star Wars now. They also own Marvel.
Right.
So Joss Whedon just made the Avengers for them, made them a whole buttload of money. Probably some of the money that they gave to George Lucas. I mean,
yeah.
So I think they should hand it to Joss Whedon.
That would be awesome.
Because that way they can get Nathan Fillion to play Han Solo, who's really the only guy who I think could play that character right now.
Nice.
Yes.
And then all he really has to do is get all the Firefly cast and just give them different names. Shepherd Book is Lando Calrissian.
Yeah. Oh, holy shit, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you can't find another black guy in Hollywood. Sorry, I had to say it.
And all of a sudden...
but he'd actually be good at it.
Yeah, I agree.
All of a sudden, the Tams are Skywalkers. Fine. Leia just got cooler.
Hey. My take on it is what Disney has learned from Avengers is that if you throw fucking buckets of money into a movie and you get a good writer, then you'll make buckets of money. So as long as they throw buckets of money
with a good script,
right?
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, so holding out for good results of the Star Wars, but it is really cool that Lucas gave so much money, or has given up so much of that money to a really good cause. And
he's done other things like.
Oh, he's had that charity for a long time. That
where he lived, Utopia? I guess there was he had tried to have a studio built.
Oh yeah. He wanted to open a
studio on his property, and his neighbors had fought it for a long time.
Yeah.
So he sold the land off to make it like mixed income housing.
Yeah, that was right, and that was such a badass move.
Yeah,
that's pretty great. You know what? Fuck you. I'm going to have Section 8 housing right next door to you.
Now, bear in mind, in that area, to qualify for Section 8, it's still something like $60,000-$70,000 a year.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Not in my backyard.
Yeah, we totally qualify. And the other thing, he said this. The announcement continues a commitment that Lucas made in 2010 to the Giving Pledge. I believe the Giving Pledge was something that Warren Buffett started. Crazy socialist nightmare, where
that was Bill Gates, right?
Yeah, they got a whole bunch of rich people to basically agree to give away their entire fortunes upon their death or sooner to improve humanity.
Speaking of Warren Buffett,
does anybody else remember that?
Yeah.
Am I crazy?
No, I remember that a lot because that was one of those things I pointed to, and that was like my go-to argument for atheists are bad people. You know, Bill fucking Gates, shut the hell up.
So, on to Troll of the Week.
Troll of the Week. This one was great.
Troll of the Week. Yeah, this is fantastic. Jack, take it away.
This is an article on News 24 by Tyrone Stir. And it's, God, I almost don't want to spoil it. It is a very good mimic of anti-atheist argument. And it proceeds to cite a whole bunch of sources as it goes through. And then it gets to the end and it just said, yeah, I made all that up.
Psych.
Psych.
Like, none of the facts I said are true.
Hope you got a good laugh out of that.
It was very well done. Yeah.
It was. Yeah, one of the things I thought was really well done about this was the way he incorporated some fact, which always makes for a good lie.
Yeah.
Again, I talked about the atheists in U.S. prison populations.
Yeah, that was good because that's where I started thinking, oh, like where's the trolling part?
Yeah. And then they start to, but when you get to that next paragraph, he starts talking about the kids of atheists being 17 more times more likely to commit violent crime. It's like, wait, that's not right.
Yeah.
I know that's not right. And then you get to the next one, you're just like, where are they pulling these facts from? And you just, we're going to have to research the crap out of this, aren't we?
Yeah. Then you get to the bottom and, oh, wait, don't bother.
Oh, wait. Nice.
As contentious as these assertions are, I assure you they're true. Only the facts are made up. Mm-hmm. And the references. Yeah, it's a total troll. I mean, troll of the week.
Mm-hmm. And yet, someone somewhere will read it and forward it to somebody else, not reading the last couple of paragraphs of it.
Oh yeah, this is going in somebody's email without those last 3 lines, right?
Yeah. It'll be on
nice Snopes in a week.
Yeah.
But it is fantastically well done, so do go read it.
Yeah, it's worth your time. Mitt Romney preaching the gospel. I really don't have anything to say to this other than just watch the video of Mitt Romney
explaining Mormonism.
Mm-hmm.
Looking like he gets hard explaining Mormonism. Like, I thought he was an automaton about the whole thing. This kind of shows that, and this is scary, he believes it.
Well, see, what I thought was interesting is that he's talking about it, and he's talking fast, and I think it's because he's trying to get back to, because he says at the end, back to abortion. He was trying to make another point, and somebody forced him to talk about Mormonism. Yeah. So he rattles it off because he probably knows it like the back of his hand. And I think that's part of the reason that he seems so animated. This is the whole taken out of context kind of thing. I think it's because he was trying to get to another point, but it's so batshit crazy. And the fact that he just rattles it off like that.
Right. And I guess that's with the advent of that song from the Book of Mormon musical, that particular fact that he's talking about is a little more part of the culture.
Yeah.
Right.
With the whole Jackson County, Missouri being where the Garden of Eden is in the Mormon church.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is just...
Yeah. Woohoo! All right. See, that's... Yeah, I mean, seriously, that's where I was just like, okay. It just went on a theological bent where it just automatically translates into bullshit for me. I brought this up to my religious folks a couple weeks back, and at first they chided me in a way, in their very liberal way, of bringing it up. And then I started saying what Mormons believe, because they're ignorant of the fact of what Mormons believe.
Right.
And then there was looks of horror on their faces.
And that's the thing that amazes me about, when you talk about Mormonism or Raelianism or Scientology to someone who's Protestant or Catholic or Baptist or whatever, they get that horrified, this is crazy, they recognize it's crazy look on their face, but it's not any goddamn weirder than what they think.
No, not.
So we end up on this weird line of almost kind of defending Mormonism in a weird roundabout way where it's just like, well, it's not any crazier than what you think.
Well, and there's the tact I take. I try to get them to be like, oh, that's just crazy. And I go, so what's the difference?
Yeah.
And then they get mad at me.
Yeah.
But no, I mean,
let's get to that talking snake.
About that transubstantiation.
that
very
push
delicious.
that burned and didn't.
It's like Martin Luther is a crazy anti-Semitic asshole.
Right.
Jesus.
Whose 10 platforms coincided with the platforms of the Nazi Party.
Yeah,
A couple 100 years later.
it's crazy.
You know what what I really can't get my brain around is that there are black Mormons.
You know what though? But let's take a look at this. There's black Christians. It is kind of the religion of the slave masters.
It's not as blatant. I mean,
Yeah,
Mormon
that makes slightly more sense than there being white Christians.
Well, it's when I was in college, I had Mormons that were coming over to my house, and I don't remember if I talked to you guys about this before or not, but I invited them over several times. And at first they sounded like more or less any Protestant denomination of Christianity. And I was inviting them over because I wanted to just, I wanted to hear what they said, And one of the two missionaries was from Hawaii, definitely of a Polynesian background. And I asked him, when they started getting into the whole evil Native Americans, condemned to be dark-skinned and different because of killing off their fellow brethren who had also been Jews that went by boat to North America. And I said, how can you believe this? How can you condemn your people as being evil people that according to this belief? And his answer was, well, you have to think of it like children. Children aren't ready for the full responsibilities of adults. And it's the same way with colored people. He said,
wow.
What?
Oh my God!
Colored people.
Now wait,
and this is everyone. This is everyone that is not a white European. That colored people are like children, and they were not ready until 1978, or whenever the Mormon Church decided it was okay.
And that's how they square that circle.
That's how they square that circle. Wow. Exactly.
Wow.
It was that they were children who were not ready until God had decided they were not ready until then to be accepted as full adults, human beings. Right.
You're right.
You know what's crazy about that? That sounds like the way an atheist would, like your typical like flying free 333 on Twitter, who would like just egregiously generalize some kind of point about, oh, well, they just think of everybody as children. And you almost go, well, that's a little bit too much of a generalization. And then you go, oh, wait, not so much. Apparently that's what they think.
Right.
And this person was Polynesian.
Right.
Fuck.
Yeah, fuck.
So does he also believe that his kids are going to be lighter skinned than his as the curse is wearing off? Or?
Well, he didn't really go far enough into that. I mean,
because that is in the book.
It is, but I think that may have been the last time that I talked. In fact, that was the last time that I talked to him specifically, because they were supposed to come back the next week and they didn't. and a couple of weeks went by, and then I was getting ready to go out, like to the bar or whatever, and my doorbell rang, and I answered the door, and it was the white missionary of the two, and some new guy.
Apparently, you broke one, and they just got a replacement.
Right. Well, they got a replacement, and then they
of sheer horror on your face, and said, maybe you shouldn't go back to that guy's house.
Right. Well, that means they should back up, and I tell you what, with the Polynesian guy, I mean, I was like, my father's family is American Indian as far back, however many thousands of years, tens of thousands of years, as we can fucking count. And you're telling me that they are a damned people.
And Jewish.
And Jewish, right. in opposition to everything that we've learned, about, Native peoples in the Americas.
Wow.
As opposed to the, coming here, thousands of years ago over the land bridge in successive waves, they are actually from Palestine around 600 BC. Yes, that was their history. I'm like, there's a total
disconnect from the facts.
It's cognitive dissonance.
Well, it's cognitive dissonance on a grand scale.
Cognitive dissonance, hell, with the Polynesian guy, it's Stockholm syndrome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Mormonism is the Scientology of the 19th century. It's just so patently false. It is so patently false. Well, this is where I have to bring up. Have you guys seen the Mormon Missionary Positions website?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, it's so funny.
It's so wrong.
That will be added to the show notes.
Yes, it should be. And the only other thing we had left was this Gary Johnson fan poster thing,
which was nice
to wrap up our election coverage, because this is our last show before. Go vote, people.
Yeah, go vote.
Go vote.
You don't have to agree with us, just vote.
Right.
But have an opinion, damn it.
Right. Even if it's wrong.
I'm not one of those people who says it doesn't matter who you vote for, but if it doesn't matter, stay home. But anyway, so Gary Johnson on his Facebook shared a poster, campaign poster, that one of his, supporters made for him and sent out. And it's a picture of a very attractive young woman on a beach drawing the L for live free in the sand and stuff. And this apparently sparked a big controversy of people saying that it was cheap and tawdry and whatever. And, I mean, it's the Libertarian Party, the party that wants to legalize pot and prostitution. I don't see a problem with somebody wearing whatever they want on a campaign poster.
Right.
I really didn't see the issue there.
They made it themselves.
Right. It wasn't even made by him or his campaign.
It was made by her.
Yeah.
Read the comments on it. She comes like halfway down. She comes on and says, "That's me, and I'm proud of my body. I'm proud of the choices I made, and I have no problem with this."
Yeah.
And then there's people saying that she doesn't need to dress like that. Ridiculous.
Yeah, there's the whole aspect to that of, I guess, telling her what she should or should not do.
Yeah.
Which, I don't understand.
Doesn't really follow suit in the libertarians, I don't think. It shouldn't. No. Anyway.
Right. Well,
it shouldn't follow suit in feminism either.
No, it really shouldn't. And that's kind of why I brought this up, because I got into an argument about this that I just couldn't understand, It was kind of like, it was this weird kind of a gray area where it was like, okay, so you're saying that she needs to be more modest and not flaunt her body, so you want her to wear a burqa? What?
Well, the libertarian movement has been hijacked in good part by the teabaggers.
Yeah.
And they are the Christian Taliban.
Yeah, but
to them, they are willing to ignore the atheism of Ayn Rand.
But not if Ayn Rand was wearing a miniskirt.
I mean, I could be wrong, but it wouldn't criticizing this woman's choice to depict herself in whatever way she chose would be against the third wave of feminism?
Right.
Is anybody familiar with this? So criticizing her for her own personal choice in how to support the candidate she believes in. It's not like she was naked, and not that would even matter. I don't know. It's also very confusing.
No, and I brought this up because I got into an argument about it where, somebody said this is, traditional exploitive politics, and just couldn't get my brain around that particular part of it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I didn't see I don't see how that is traditionally exploitive in politics. When I think traditionally exploitive in politics, I tend to think getting, lower income people to vote against their own self-interests.
Right.
I don't think that necessarily has anything to do with what anyone's wearing. I really just don't know what happened in that thread. There'll be a link to it in the show notes. Go read what the people were saying. It's just kind of off the wall. The amount of criticism that was leveled at it. I mean, I'm one of those people who falls on the you can't legislate taste kind of line, and I think everything's fine, but
yeah. No, and I would agree. I mean, it's not like someone took an image of somebody else and used it. Yeah. And it's not even that bad. I mean,
no, there's nothing particularly. If you go to her cover photos, one that she has, that one's far more risque, and there's 4 of them there.
It's time for America to whip out its Johnson.
Yeah.
Be libertarian.
So yeah, I thought that exchange is interesting and worth taking a look at.
Yeah, I don't know. The whole thing's dumb. I don't have anything very intellectual to say about it.
Yeah, I got nothing.
All right.
Yeah.
It's basically telling somebody what they should or should not do, yet again, which is fucking, like as you were saying, kind of ridiculous.
That makes you a bad person.
From a libertarian standpoint, you're telling somebody what they should or should not do. You're a bad libertarian. You don't understand the fuck you're talking about. Which, if we wanted to get into a whole nother discussion, is why I hate Ron Paul.
Yeah.
Yeah, but don't really have to worry about him for now. And no. I don't think he's going to be. He can't run again. He's too fucking old.
No, he's a non-issue, as he should be. I can't stand the man. But yeah, he's a non-issue. He'll never run again. Yeah. We have to worry about his tool of a son.
Yeah.
But he'll go the Bachmann route, I think. Yeah. And in 2016, he'll be the joke.
Yeah, I think so.
In 2016, because he's an idiot.
And next time we'll either be feeling pretty much the same as we do now, or we're going to come up with a whole lot more Mormon jokes.
Yes.
Yeah,
the only certain outcomes of the next week.
Will be bored or outraged.
I so want to be bored. You look at various things, and it's like, okay, the popular vote's pretty tied, but the Electoral College seems to be firmly in Obama's favor.
Oh, by a lot, yeah.
Yeah, it's sort of ridiculous. But again, and then I'm like, well, I don't really know what to believe at this point because I don't trust anybody in the media.
No.
It's all a bunch of bullshit.
Like they're taking raw data, and there's just too many people that are taking that raw data and trying to incorporate it into whatever narrative they want to push.
Yeah.
And it's too easy to take numbers like that and to just shuffle them around to say whatever it is you want them to say.
Or but at the same time, it really does look like the Electoral College it's not even close.
I tend to give a lot of weight to Nate Silver because he was dead on last time.
Yeah.
He could not have been more right. He even called North Carolina.
Yeah. Which was weird.
Yeah, it took like a day and a half to find out he was right. It was crazy.
And he's calling it for Obama?
His numbers went up since last time I looked. He's giving Obama essentially an 81% chance to win at this point.
I wonder what it is in Pennsylvania. I don't know. I haven't been...
What
Obama's percentage in Pennsylvania is.
According to Nate Silver?
Yeah.
96.2.
What? Really?
Yeah.
See, yeah, because they keep playing it as like it's so fucking close here.
Yeah, but close doesn't mean that Obama's not ahead. They like to talk about what the margin is because the margin is a whole lot different than what the actual chance of winning is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, it could be a 1% margin, but if it's a 1% margin on election day, the guy in the lead is still the guy in the lead.
Well, yeah, okay, yeah, I see what you're saying. I thought you meant that it was like 80-something% Obama.
Oh no,
because I want it to be runaway here. I want it to be a total runaway for Obama, so I can
feel justified in not voting for him.
Exactly. I freely admit that. I want it to be a runaway for Obama, so I can just sit there and whistle as I fucking pull the fucking Johnson. Pull my Johnson. I thought about it. As soon as I said it, as soon as it came out of my mouth, I was like, oh shit.
He's got Obama up by 5.
Okay, that's about right from what I've heard here. It's 4 according to the local.
Well, everybody, thanks for listening. Once again, if you have any questions, comments, suggestions, whatever, you can get a hold of us on email, lefthemispheres@gmail.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Google+, or on Twitter. You know the drill. And thanks for listening.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Go vote.
Like,
go vote.